First thing we need to do is read the problem. 2/3 of the flowers were red. There were 60 red flowers. How many flowers were there in all? To work this problem, we make an equation for the sentence that tells us about a fraction of a group. 2/3 of the flowers were red. Here's the equation. 2/3 of the flowers were red. The next sentence gives us a number for red flowers. What's that number? 60 red flowers. So we know that 2/3 of the flowers are red, and there are 60 red flowers. The equation has only one letter, so I can figure out how many flowers there were in all. In order to get the variable by itself, I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by the reciprocal. 3/2 times 2/3 equals 1, so I'm left with just flowers on this side. Now 60 times 2/3, so I'm going to do 60 over 1 times 3 over 2. 60 times 3 is equal to 180 over 2. 180 divided by 2 equals 90. So there were 90 flowers. So F is equal to 90. Please make sure to copy this information into your notes. Let's try this next problem. It says 1/4 of the fish were goldfish. There were 24 fish. How many were goldfish? 1/4 of the fish were gold. There were 24 fish. Because I know what my number for fish is, I can substitute that into my equation. So 1/4 of the fish, 24 fish, were goldfish. Now, since my equation has only one variable, I can solve. 1/4 times 24 over 1 equals G. My variable is already on one side of the equation by itself, so all I have to do here is multiply. 1 times 24 equals 24, and 4 times 1 equals 4. 24 over 4 is equal to 6. So there were 6 goldfish. Please copy this information into your notes. Here is a fraction. And if you see, we have this fraction 3 times 3 times 3 times 5 times 5 over 2 times 3 times 3 times 5. This fraction looks different than other fractions we've seen before, but it's just because it's been broken into its prime numbers. So we are going to go ahead and simplify this fraction. And in order to simplify, all we have to do is if there is a top number that matches exactly with one bottom number, we can cross it off. And the reason we can do this is because if we have a fraction 3 over 3, that's equal to 1. So if I look here, I can see I have a 3 here and a 3 here, so that would cross off. Next, I look and I see there's a 3 here, and there's 1 3 right here to match it with, so I can cross it off. I go to my next number, and I have a 3. There is not another 3 on bottom to match it with, so I cannot cross it off. It must stay. So I go to my next number. I have a 5 here, and I have a 5 here I can match it with, so I will cross that off. And then I move to my next number. I have a 5 here, and the only thing I have is a 2, and those do not match, so I'm done. Now from here, I can simplify. On top, I am left with 3 and 5. So my top is equal to 3 times 5. And on bottom, I'm simply left with this 2, so 2 would go on bottom. Now from here, I can multiply across. 3 times 5 is 15, and 2 stays the same. So this is prime fraction simplification. And your answer is just 15 halves. Next, you're going to learn about prime factorization. So the first number I'm going to look at is 36. Is 36 a prime number? Well, first I'll do the test for 2. I look and I see that 6 is an even number, so I know that 2 goes into it. So when I'm doing prime factorization, I keep dividing out my prime numbers. So if I go here, I know that 2 goes into 36 evenly, or 36 can be divided by 2. 36 divided by 2 equals 18, so I'm going to write 18 right here. Now I need to check, is 18 a prime number? No. How do I know? I go ahead and I check it for other primes. So we have 18 right here. 18 is an even number. It ends in 2. So we know that 2 is a factor, or a prime factor of 18. So I'm going to go ahead and divide my 2 out. 18 divided by 2 is equal to 9. Now I'm looking at 9. Is 9 a prime factor? No, because I know that the factor 3 goes into it. So I will divide 9 by 3. 9 divided by 3 is equal to 3. Now, 3 is a prime factor, so I know that I've completed all my steps. I am done with prime factorization when my top number is a prime number. So, now to figure out the prime factorization for the number 36, I simply just multiply all my numbers on the outside. So the prime factorization of 36 would be 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 equals 36. Next, we're going to look at finding the area and perimeter of 3 different shapes. First of all, we need to know the difference between area and perimeter. Area is simply the measure of the inside, and perimeter is the distance around something. Make sure you copy this information into your notes. In order to find my perimeter, all I do is add up all my sides. And that's true for no matter what shape you're working with, whether it's a rectangle, a parallelogram, or a triangle. I simply add up all my sides. So for the triangle, that would be these 3 sides. For the parallelogram, that would be these 4 sides. For the rectangle, that would be these 4 sides. Now finding the area for each of these shapes is a little bit different. First, I find the area of a rectangle by taking my base times my height. My base times my height. So let's say I had a rectangle with a height of 4 and a base of 6. My area would simply be found by taking 6 times 4 equals 24. And if these were centimeters, we'd call this centimeters squared. When we're finding area, we always include squared because it's looking at the inside as if it were a bunch of tiny little squares. Next, let's look at how we find the area of a parallelogram. Area of a parallelogram is the same. It is base times height. So if we have our base times our height is the distance from the top to the bottom, and the base is our distance along the bottom. So let's say I have a parallelogram, and my height is 3, my base is 5, and my side is 4. To find the area, I need to multiply my base times my height, which is 5 times 3, and that equals 15. Again, let's say, pretend these are inches, then it would be inches squared. And the last I'm going to look at is my area of a triangle. Area of a triangle is found by taking the base times the height. Let's say I had a triangle with a height of 2 and a base of 4. I'm going to go ahead and multiply my base times my height and divide it by 2, because my area is found by taking 1/2 base times height. So if I have 1/2 times 2 times 4, I can look at this as 2 times 4 equals 8 over 2, and 8 over 2 is equal to 4. And let's pretend these are centimeters, so my area would be 4 centimeters squared. Make sure you copy all of this information into your notes.